Welcome back. Oil-rich Gulf states are struggling as the war in Iran hits their economies. On this map, you can see where gas and oil infrastructure has already been hit. As the conflict widens, the Strait of Hormuz sits basically empty. Many private maritime insurance companies have now pulled coverage because of the war-related damage. The Trump administration has said it will provide up to $20 billion in reinsurance to get tankers moving again. But all of this is sending oil prices surging. U.S. crude oil prices jumped 36% this week to $91 a barrel. The international benchmark Brent crude gained 27%, topping $93 a barrel. Russia is not playing a neutral observer in the war. That's according to multiple sources who have spoken with CNN. They say U.S. intelligence shows Moscow is supplying Iran with intelligence about the location and movement of U.S. ships, planes and troops. Much of it comes from Russian satellites, but it's still unclear if any Iranian attack can be linked to the intelligence received from Moscow. Russia's state news agency says the two countries' presidents held a phone call on Friday and agreed to continue contact. For more, we are joined by CNN's Gabe Cohen. He's in Washington for us. Gabe, thanks so much for being with me and staying up late for us. Russia apparently getting involved now does seem like quite a massive moment. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, Ben, that's one of the reasons that this is really significant, because it's the first clear indication that Moscow is getting involved in this war. Those sources telling CNN that Russia is really specifically providing that intel about the location of American troops and assets so that the Iranian military can target them. And much of that intelligence is coming from that sophisticated satellite system that Russia has. It's told that Iran does not typically have at its disposal, as that country is being seeing their own military capabilities really degraded day after day from all of this fighting. It's not a huge surprise that the two countries would be talking. These are nations that for years have worked together in some capacity on various military technology like this. And what we don't know here is whether this means that Russia's involvement in this conflict could expand, especially after that phone call you referenced on Friday between the Iranian president and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, the White House, for their part, they really brushed off this story. They do not want to talk about Russia. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth told CBS News that, of course, the president is well aware of who is talking to who, but they're not concerned at this point about any specific security threat from Russia, though I will note just a couple days ago, Hegseth told reporters that both Russia and China right now are, quote, not really a factor in this war. That could be changing here. We also heard Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt tell reporters that if Russia is in fact providing this information to Iran, it's clearly not making much of a difference because of the success of the U.S. military operation that we have seen over the past week. And President Trump himself snapped at a reporter from Fox News who asked about this story during an event on Friday while the White House was focused on how to potentially change college sports. Here's what the president said.
It sounds like the Russians are helping Iran.
That's an easy problem compared to what we're doing here. But can I be honest? It's just, I have a lot of respect for you. You've always been very nice. What a stupid question that is to be asking at this time. We're talking about something else.
So again, the White House has not condemned Russia for this. They have been laser focused on really talking about the achievements that they say the military has gained over the past week or so. Trump also told CNN on Friday that a week ago Iran was powerful and, quote, now they have been indeed neutered. The president has said hopefully this was going to be a 4 to 5 week operation, but big questions now about that timeline if it could change if more countries like Russia are drawn into the conflict.
That is a very big question indeed. Thanks so much for now. Appreciate it. Okay. It's growing scrutiny. Reactions in Iran. Let's stay ahead. What we know about the strikes and their dangerous proximity to civilians like stay with us,
In Tokyo, safety is part of everyday life. Vigilant prevention keeps you secure day and night. Rapid response fire crews unite expertise and technology to protect the city. Robust disaster preparedness equips the city for extreme events. A 100-year vision for ever-growing resilience. Safe, prepared, welcoming. That's Tokyo.
If you can keep your head when rockets all around you are losing and you can't see a way through, if you can trust your instincts when to buy, sell, or wait, don't be tired by the waiting. If you can trade and not make money your master, meeting triumph and disaster in equal measure. If you can run the world and not be afraid of the bears, treating both impostors the same. For when we come together, we will make sense of it all. And then the business world will be yours, and all that is in it. And what is more, my friend, you will be profitable. You are indeed watching Questing's business.
Weekdays on CNN tonight. 16 stories that matter.
This whole area is just engulfed in flames. We witnessed something nobody alive has ever seen before. You said that AI could wipe out half of all entry-level jobs. How soon might that happen?
Eyewitness. A red alert executive on bomb shelter. Every night makes sense of the world.
How do you make the case that USA previous mission was in the United States national interest?
And Anderson Cooper 360 weekdays on CNN.
Greenland actually do have instructions for people what to do in a time of crisis. President Trump now says he has to win. He says it's going to get everything at no cost.
Let's solve the dialogue.
We're in rural war, a Danish military charge is there for the future. Is Greenland safe? We have some red lines. We can cross the red lines.
Y vamos a estar en Buenos Aires. Y CNN.
Right, welcome back. Let's get you up to speed with the latest on war in Iran. At least three countries in the region have been taking fire in recent hours following this attack into Iran. Iran's domestic airport was hit Friday night after Israel said it launched a broad-scale wave of strikes. But hours later, the sirens, emergency sirens, ringing out in Jerusalem as Iran launched at least 10 missiles towards Israel, according to the Israeli military. Some drone debris coming from Lebanon fell into northern Israel, but there are no reports of injuries. The United Arab Emirates said in the last hour that its air defenses were responding to a missile threat, while in Saudi Arabia, we heard earlier that it shot down 16 drones heading towards one of its largest oil refineries. Senior producer Bijan Husseini is monitoring all of this for us. He joins us now from Doha, Qatar. And Bijan, this morning we got an alert here in Abu Dhabi. We've got the all clear now, but clearly Iran is still targeting various countries here in the region. What are you experiencing there in Doha?
Let's start with UAE. I know you guys received those alarms in Abu Dhabi. Team members also receiving, a bit of feedback here, also receiving alarms in Dubai and Sharjah as well. We know that the UAE successfully intercepted 9 missiles and 109 drones yesterday in Saudi Arabia. You mentioned there's drones heading to the Shale oil field. This massive oil and gas fields and Saudis import out in the desert. It's operated by Saudi Aramco. They put out about a million barrels of crude production a day. So developments over there have all been according to the country's Ministry of Defense. Also, additional missiles being sent to Pul Sultan Air Base, Saudi Arabia. All of those were intercepted as well. Over in Bahrain, we've heard reports of alarms sounding throughout the capital city there, but no reports of missiles or drones as of yet. In Kuwait, the country saying that armed forces yesterday shot down 12 drones and 14 missiles. And here in Qatar, the Ministry of Defense confirming over the course of Friday that 10 drones were launched from Iran. 9 of those successfully intercepted, one hitting an uninhabitable part of the country.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on. We're seeing some of these images. This is 7 days in when I speak to the ADA. Bijan Hosseini, thank you so much for that update. Coming live from Doha. Now, as the war with Iran rages, questions are being raised about the decision of US and Israeli bombing campaigns. The new CNN investigation covers just how close these strikes have come, hitting civilian sites and infrastructure. And Paul Davis has a story for us.
A city under attack. It's also home to millions of people. The US and Israeli bombing campaign of Tehran has been targeting intelligence complexes, police stations, state broadcasters, but we verified videos and analysed satellite imagery and found the impact is going beyond that, due to the densely packed nature of the city and the large-scale weapons involved. Take a look at the satellite image. This crater is 4 feet wide. That means it was likely caused by a 2,000-pound bomb. The target Iran state broadcaster, the IRIB, the strike wiped out its communications mast. These bombs used by the US and Israel are capable of killing or wounding people more than 1,000 feet away. And just 100 feet away is the Gandhi Hospital, one of the biggest in Tehran. Glass shattered, walls collapsed, and patients, including babies, being pushed out. As more videos like this began to emerge, verifying them, pinpointing the hospital where each one was filmed, then cross-reference with satellite imagery to see the damage caused by US and Israeli strikes. Like here, you can see the blown-out windows of the Gandhi Hospital space. Over in another central part of Tehran is the Motahari Hospital. And just behind it is the Iranian police headquarters. In fact, you can see the police helicopter down here. This is just before it was struck, and this is after. Entire building flattened. The Motahari Hospital is still standing, but we verified video showing substantial damage inside. It's not the only hospital in the area affected. Over here is the Khattab Hospital. Glass windows shattered and medical staff are seen running out. Further down this same street is the Iranian Red Crescent Society. Smoke billowing from behind the building. Again, people are fleeing. Across Iran as a whole, more incidents like these are emerging. We geolocated this video to the Persian Gulf Hospital in the city of Shahar. You can see newborn babies being carried out in the rubble. It's unclear what the target was, but it's close to an airport and a military airbase. This is not just hospitals. Other civilian sites are also prone to strikes. This school in southern Iran directly hit, resulting in deaths of over 160 students and staff, according to Iranian state media. Neither the US nor Israel have acknowledged they caused the strike. It was just 200 feet from an Iranian military base. You can see some of their buildings hit as well as damage to the school. Another strike hit the gym in southern Iran. There were reportedly 20 volleyball players died at the time, Iranian media said. It was also right next to a police station. As strikes continue, access to safe medical facilities will be crucial. But the civilian toll is not. The human rights activist news agency now reporting over Al-Dead. 80 Blaze, CNN, London.
CNN has reached out to US and the Israeli military for comment on these strikes. and the steps that they're taking to invent civilian arm and bring in CNN military analyst and high US Army Lieutenant General Mark Schwartz. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to talk about latest news and what we've seen in terms of KTLA's reporting about civilian assets being targeted. We know that the United States has consistently said that civilian assets are not targets. What's your assessment seeing the reporting and importantly the satellite imaging?
Well, I believe the comments because and are accurate. I know that the United States will not really target civilian infrastructure, but as comprehensive report showed, a lot of these delays are responsible. The roles that in fact that would get is a tragedy, but they're very close proximity to security forces or agents very based. So it's real. A lot of times the intense amount of activity that's going on in urban sectors that sometimes accidents occur and collateral damage will be going out to the hospital, etc. do occur, and I am confident. Just my own experience dealing with these types of incidents that the command will look and do a investigate to determine if in fact it is right by mistake, not eliminate. In my view, these areas and what they're going to do in the future to mitigate the likelihood of that happening again.
Mm-hmm. So what is your view in terms of the mitigation? Because obviously going, through bombardment, are you anticipating an announcement of boots on the ground at some point?
I'm not. Ideally, we won't do that. Change the situation from a security standpoint inside of Iran. I think that's actually exacerbating. What we're seeing now is not honestly are in terms of mitigation. The key thing what the Air Force and part of your ears to do the analysis called weapon so determining the combination that we're going to use to mitigate the collateral damage that's surrounding the structures. So that's something that General Hindrath actually earlier on, one of the threats we've been living on Wednesday was that they're going to be using a lot of anti-aircraft munitions, fighter jets, things like that. There are smaller certainly produce guided munitions as the best way to be munitions on the other hand, come season, but the explosive is a lot of that, and therefore likelihood of damage to structures it is reduced.
Yeah. So the other big piece of news that we've been covering today is Russia's hand potentially in this war. The intelligence reports suggesting that Moscow is helping even locate US forces. What did you make of that? And are you surprised that Russia could perhaps be playing a hand here?
I'm not surprised. I mean, Russia is, in my view, in the United States, and they certainly have a long-standing relationship with Iran. They're going to be applied significantly with drones and other capabilities by more range. So, I think there are confidence that the executive branch is not willing to take that step against Russia or if this is actually true based on the reporting that I mean that should be actually going to get Russia increased sanctions. Secretary sanctions is not yet in place. I think Russia should have been in place long ago. So it's disturbing and it puts U.S. certainly our ally in the future. So we need to address it.
All right. Mark, thank you so much for the update. Good to have you on the show. Thousands of international mining accounts across the Middle East since last weekend, and the conflict nations are working to bring their citizens home. That is coming up right here on CNN.
Explore Africa with CNN, where 54 nations create the fabric of the rich continent. effect is profit business. The biggest economic trend impacting nobody has ever done this in America. Clearly you're something here. Nature and culture. I know music is everything. The story is shaping Africa today. Most market around the world. I think 5 years. What I find the most
I think the digital economy is very
this ability to do something my people for my continent.
Yeah, it's amazing. Feels so good to be here.
On Welcome to Live, we cover it all from legal battles.
One juror has now been excused from the showdown. How much is that is on president
And the conversations between.
way from Washington, way is different president? Will you take this all the way to the Supreme Court?
I'm not really knowledgeable of what you say.
What you say, I'm your voice.
All Welcome to Live. Tuesday, Friday on CNN. Bring all sides to the table. Talk about the issues. Policy. And then the business and things that wrap up your day.
I get your sense of probably, but you
Tuesday, Saturday on CNN.
real election Donald Trump play any role in your decision to resign? Why do you study it? Back your finger. Why? Do you have any sort of background on the moment with consequences for the nation and the world?
watch locally with CNN.
We understand there is intense trial by the ongoing is very close. You have a leader who's given a 5-year plan. How do you think it's difficult? It took some time to realize that the coverage ready.
Cathay starts repatriation flights to several European cities today. The airline says flights are hitting London, Paris, Madrid, Rome, and Frankfurt. With priority given families, elderly passengers, those with urgent medical and compassionate travel needs. Commercial flights are suspended in Qatar airspace closed over several Middle East nations in the ongoing war with Iran. Countries around the world are working to get stranded travelers home. More evacuation flights are set to take off in the coming days. Now, U.S. officials said Friday that hundreds of Americans returned on several chartered planes with flight plans and security conditions allow. Senator Linda Kaye has warned a complex process.
A seismic shift in air travel. Dubai International Airport operating at limited capacity. That's slowly increasing, but only at a fraction of normal levels. But across the border in Oman, Moscow International Airport is packed with passengers, a hub for many repatriation efforts. The UK government has organized charter flights from Oman. British Airways is allocating flights from there too, as well as Qatar Airways, which is operating limited flights from Moscow and Riyadh. An evacuee for Portugal says she waited 17 hours just to board her flight after a grueling trip to the airport.
I were overwhelmed. The trip was completely exhausting. I think we got probably 36 hours. The ground transport from hotel to Oman was really difficult, and then we were waiting at the airport.
Flights are trickling out of the region, but there are still risks. A recent Air France repatriation flight was forced to turn back to UAE because of the missile fire in the area. A similar incident happened in Lufthansa over the safety concerns.
Our captain of the Riyadh flight decided to go the other way our security department, not to fly to Riyadh, but to turn back Cairo, because we believe the security situation is such that this is the right decision.
Some passengers are selling lives and some money to escape the region. Flight data forces private jet activity in the Middle East has surged in the last week, accounting for 31% of flight operations from Moscow on Wednesday. A high demand causing prices to skyrocket.
The sort of flight from Dubai to Istanbul was something around 50,000. And that's normally close to $1,000. So we say there is a plus number.
A travel nightmare as airlines and countries try to accommodate their passengers. Some feeling their high prices means a ticket home. Indicating CNN.
Short break. We'll be right back after this. Stick with CNN.
In Ecuador, Guinea, something transformative is happening. The nation's capital is moving to the mainland. Places close to communities across the country and open clear routes for regional and international trade. The modern city is emerging with world-class infrastructure designed to respect natural surroundings. For residents, businesses, and investors, new opportunities are unfolding. Ciudad de la Paz stands in the center of the nation, looking to the future.
I'm gonna let you have a little secret. Happiness could lead to living longer. You wanna know how? On my podcast, Chasing Life, I'm uncovering the secrets of people around the world who are living happy, healthy, extraordinary lives. You know how they do it, and the science behind why it works. Join me as I reveal their secrets and discover how we can chase life together. Listen to Chasing Life with me, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, wherever you get your podcasts.
Caitlin Collins is your D-Source, bringing you unprecedented access to the White House.
What would you say to survivors who feel like they've gotten justice?
Capitol Hill.
What is the examining that like? Are you saying that it's not going to happen? What exactly are your day-to-day responsibilities?
And beyond.
And you think Dr. Switzerland, where President Trump just capped off you are named by President Trump.
For in-depth political coverage and analysis, watch The Source, weekdays on CNN.
Rescue crews and others searching around with possible survivors after a deadly Russian strike in northern Ukraine. President Zelensky says 7 people were killed, 10 others injured after a missile hit a residential block in Kyiv overnight. He says some people may still be trapped under the debris and rescue operations are underway. Mr. Zelensky also says Russia has launched more than 500 drones and missiles overnight, targeting energy and infrastructure across Ukraine. President Trump is once again suggesting Cuba is next on his administration's agenda. CNN, the regime, quote, is going to fall retreat soon. He also says that put Secretary of State Marco Rubio in charge of the island nation. The U.S. has put intense pressure on Cuba in recent weeks, including the oil embargo, which has caused a severe energy shortage. CNN Patrick has more about it.
Donald Trump says that Cuba is ready to fall. It would seem to me the kind of rehash we've heard from many U.S. presidents since the Cold War, but now it does feel a little different. The oil embargo Donald Trump has put on this island gives him 3 reasons to his comments to CNN that the government here is hanging on by the thinnest of threads. Every day we see cars, the road blackouts become longer and longer, and people are becoming increasingly desperate as they wonder how their food will last in the fridges if there's no more power, how they will earn a living if inflation is out of control, salaries are becoming near to worthless. And so when Donald says that the government is desperate for a deal, as he told CNN Dash on Friday, perhaps there is some truth to that, although the Cuban officials I speak say they never allow the U.S. to dictate to them ever again. They're willing to resist the Trump administration, even willing to take to the streets and fight if necessary. Although they know this appears to be checkmate as no other governments, not Cuba's allies, Russia or China, certainly not as well following U.S. attack on that country, or even Mexico following a pressure campaign from the Trump administration are stepping in to send oil this economy so desperately needs. So at the moment, there are rumors, whispers, talks of back channels going on, deals being struck, but as this crisis goes on, it is taking a far more deeply toll on the Cuban people. Patrick CNN, Havana.
The United States and Ecuador say they've carried out a joint military operation targeting drug trafficking networks. This video from a U.S. Defense Department official shows the strike being carried out against Israel. Officials say helicopters, aircraft, riverboats, and drones were utilized to locate and bomb a training camp run by a Colombian cartel group comprised of dissident firefighters. The strike took place near the Colombian border and sparked a broad background in Ecuador on organized crime.
Jesse didn't just speak to black folks, he spoke to white folks and Latinos and Asian Americans and the First Americans. He spoke to family farmers and environmentalists. He spoke to gay rights activists when nobody was talking to gay rights activists. And blue-collar workers. And he gave them the same message that they mattered. That their voice and their vote counted. He invited them to believe, he invited us to believe in our own power to change America for the better.
That was former President Barack Obama honoring the late Reverend Jesse Jackson at his memorial service in Chicago on Friday. The joyful music-filled service traced Reverend Jackson's journey from a child of the Jim Crow South through his fight for civil rights to his role political powerhouse in D.C. Former Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Bill Clinton and Joe Biden also took to the stage to reflect on Jackson's influence and legacy. Jack died on February 17th. He was 84 years old. Tornadoes have worn through parts of central U.S. Officials say at least 8 people were killed and 12 others injured in Michigan and Oklahoma. The U.S. National Weather Service tracked this tornado earlier in Michigan Friday. A homeowner filmed it in Union City. The storm warned of 7 tornado reports from the Texas Panhandle to south central Kansas. Okay, that's what we're for now. That's running and the team and then in Atlanta. And then and we'll back a very, very quick commercial break.
Tonight on Thursday, the story that matter. This whole area just engulfed in flames from the woods. We witnessed something nobody alive has ever seen before. You said that AI could wipe out half of all entry-level jobs. How soon might that happen? We've got an incredible word to go down to the bomb shelter every night except the world. How do you make the case that USAID's previous mission was in the United States national interest?
Emerson 360 days on CNN. In the hub of the West, CNN Arabic is perfectly placed to find the facts. This is what stories politics, business, culture, real life. As the pace is changing faster, we are asking the important question. What is the truth? This is CNNArabic.com. Global and try to be smart, but I want to hear our authentic voices of people who are passionate or intelligent and the consistency that we try to get at. Read Ricari at GPS, Sunday on CNN.
Discover the land of the rising sun, from the vibrant streets of Tokyo to the enchanting landscapes. Come explore Japan with CNN. Learn French and experience the best of this rich nation. A desire to create timeless beauty. Everyone takes the opportunity to sit down with you.
An epic adventure to Japan's remote corners.
In a divided America, where do I fit? Brings all to the table. Can you name one thing that you do?
Hypocrisy is so rampant. Classes and sessions.
To talk about the issues.
Congresswoman, is false. The answer is zero.
The policies. The questions. And the biggest debates to wrap up your day.
I heard you say probably this, but do you think it's
News Night with Abby Phillip, Tuesday through Saturday on CNN.
I'm Ben William in Rome, and this is CNN.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Hello, and welcome to the United States and all around the world. I'm Ben Hunt in Atlanta.
And I'm going to join us live from the Middle East programming hub here in Abu Dhabi. We've got news all around the world for you, Ben, and I will be taking you through the next hour. And this news just into CNN. Iran's president says his country will never surrender as its military continues to trade strikes with Israel and aim retaliatory fire at a number of Gulf nations. It comes after US President Donald Trump demanded Iran's unconditional surrender. In a televised address on state TV, Masoud Pezeshkian said, quote, "They will take their dreams of our unconditional surrender to the grave." A short time ago, Israel launched what it calls a broad-scale wave of strikes against Tehran. The Israeli military says it used more than 80 fighter jets to carry out the attack. New video shows Tehran's Mehrabad on fire, although it's not clear if the airport was struck directly. Iranian state media reporting explosions from one end of the capital to the other. U.S. Central Command says American forces have now hit more than 3,000 targets inside Iran, and that includes ballistic missile sites and command posts of Iran's Revolutionary Guards. Our reporters are covering all of this from various angles. We've got Paula Hancock joining us from Dubai. But first, I want to get to CNN's Jerusalem Bureau Chief Aaron Lieberman in Tel Aviv. Aaron, what we understand, Israel launching that mass attack on Tehran. And this after, we've also heard just a few minutes ago from the Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian, saying they will not surrender. Take us through the latest.
Well, what's interesting here about Israel's statement that the latest wave involved 80 fighter jets is that this isn't the largest wave of attacks we have seen by Israel. They have used more than 100 throughout the course of the first week of the war in simultaneous strikes across parts of the country here. And you can see that very much continues in this latest wave of attacks on Iran. Israel says they targeted what they say was the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps military university, as well as a number of other sites, including ballistic missile launchers and ballistic missile arrays that remain the key target for Israel. As we see them work their way down their target list. As you pointed out, U.S. Central Command says they have struck more than 3,000 targets in the first week of the war. Israel said just a couple of days ago that they have struck, I believe, about 2,500 targets. So you get a sense of how large the operation is. As it very much continues, the U.S. President Donald Trump and Defense Secretary vowed that this effectively would expand and they would see larger and larger strikes as we move into the weekend and as we move into the second week of the war here. Meanwhile, as that happens, we see Iran firing back. What's interesting is that over the course of the last several days, we have seen more of the incoming Iranian ballistic missiles happen several times during the day and the evening. Last night, there were at least 3 rounds of incoming ballistic missile fire in the overnight hours. So Iran, at least retaining some ability to launch at Israel. Meanwhile, on the Lebanese front, Israel continues to go after Hezbollah targets there. What's interesting there as well is that Hezbollah media and the Lebanese Ministry of Public Health have said that Israel has conducted commando raids into the country using helicopters. There's a small number of ground forces that have engaged in firefights with Hezbollah militants. So it seems that Israel is pushing deeper into the country. This isn't a ground incursion or a ground invasion at this point, even as Israel has taken more positions along the Israel-Lebanon border, but we will certainly wait to see where this goes from here. Keep in mind that over the course of the past 24 or 48 hours, Israel has issued evacuation warnings for large swaths of southern Lebanon, basically the entire south of the country, as well as large parts of the capital of Beirut and parts of the Bekaa Valley. So Israel has the forces up there as it continues pushing and vows, at least right now, that Hezbollah will be disarmed before they scale back what's happening and the Israeli strikes in Lebanon.
Aaron, I just want to bring up this map of all the strikes, the U.S.-Israeli strikes into Iran, and it's quite widespread. You mentioned here that the 80 fighter jets in those pre-dawn strikes in Iran were really targeting ballistic missile sites, military bunkers, and so forth. What is our understanding of the degradation of Iran's military capabilities? Do we have any insight on that?
So we've gotten some of this information from the Israeli military. They say they've targeted somewhere between, and I forget the exact numbers, between 60 and 80% of the ballistic missile launchers, as well as either 60 or 80% of the missile and air defenses. So that's been a key target. That's actually a lot of what has allowed the Israeli Air Force and the American Air Force and American Navy to basically have free reign over large parts of Iran. It's because they were able to take out the air defenses, and that's why you see the Israeli military putting out videos of their fighters over Iran. It's because of that freedom they have to operate. But this has always been an asymmetrical war. Iran was never going to put up its air force and match it fighter to fighter with the U.S. or Israel. Iran's weapons have been their ballistic missiles, and they still have those at least to some extent, as we saw here last night, as well as their one-way attack drones, and then some of their other capabilities. That's what Iran is using here to fight back, as well as their determination to stay in the fight here, and that's what we're seeing on day 8.
Yeah, and Masoud Pezeshkian saying they are not going to surrender. that coming just a short time ago. Oren Lieberman, thank you so much for that update. I want to go live now to CNN's Paula Hancock, who's in Dubai. Good to see you, Paula. I want you to give me a bit of insight into what has happened in Dubai today, the interception, specifically a lot of news out of Dubai airport. What is the latest there?
Yeah, so Eleni, this was a couple of hours ago. We did hear the interceptions. We also heard the alerts, the emergency alerts, telling us to stay inside. And it does appear as though there has been some kind of impact near or in the grounds of Dubai International Airport. We're waiting for official lines on that. What we did hear is that flights were suspended temporarily. We heard from the Dubai Media Office saying that it was for the safety of passengers, airport staff and airline crew. But then just half an hour later, Emirates said that all the flights had resumed, and if you a flight this afternoon, you could presume it was going to go ahead. Now, we did speak to a resident of Dubai who was inside the airport when the blast happened. Let's listen to what he saw.
Well, shortly after 9 o'clock, we were at the Terminal 3 at Dubai International Airport. And there was a large impact. A lot of smoke could be seen from the glass. It seemed to be within the airport perimeter, but obviously in these situations it's quite difficult to tell. There were vibrations, reverberations. What was extraordinary is that the way the Dubai authorities within the airport reacted. There was professionalism, there was calm, there was no panic. The passengers showed no panic either that I could see.
And certainly that was the case when we were at the airport a few days ago. It was a very calm and organised atmosphere. Now, at this point, it's unclear whether it was a direct hit, whether it was debris from an interception. We certainly have seen a number of drones and missiles continue to be able to impact the Gulf nations. Here in the UAE on Friday, officials said they intercepted 9 ballistic missiles, 101 drones, and they remain on high alert. We also saw in Saudi Arabia that officials there saying that 20 drones were approaching the Sheba oil field when they intercepted them. Also, the Ministry of Defence saying that there were 5 separate waves of attacks since midnight. So even though we are hearing from US officials that the ability of Tehran to be able to retaliate, that the number of ballistic missiles and drones is dramatically reduced from the beginning of this war, they are still able to get some through. And certainly more than 100 drones coming towards the UAE on Friday is still a significant number. But the air defence systems here and also across many of the Gulf nations are working as they should. Well over 90% of what is coming in is being intercepted. Eleni?
Yeah, very true. Even with the alerts this morning, interceptions going well despite the continued onslaught here. Paula Hancock, we appreciate that update live in Dubai for us. Now, oil-rich Gulf states are struggling as the war with Iran strains their economies on this map. You can see where gas and oil infrastructure has already been hit as the conflict widens. The Strait of Hormuz sits basically empty. The vital shipping channel normally handles tankers carrying 20% of the world's oil supply. Because of this, oil prices are surging. U.S. crude oil prices jumped 36% this week to $91 a barrel. The international benchmark Brent crude has gained 27%. Look at that. It's sitting at just over $93 a barrel. U.S. markets have also dipped as investors worry about energy inflation. The Dow, the S&P 500, as well as NASDAQ all closing in the red on Friday. Take a look at that. S&P down 1.3%. Joining me now, we've got from Huddersfield, England, is Danny Hewson. He is the head of financial analysis at AJ Bell. Really good to have you with us. You know, I want you to take me through what we're seeing in the oil market in particular, because earlier this week, Despite energy and critical energy infrastructure that was struck, there was almost, no real, there was a jump, but it wasn't really that aggressive. Things changed dramatically on Friday. Take me through why that is. Is there an understanding in terms of the supply constraints from the Strait of Hormuz and potentially the capacity loss that we're seeing out of this region through the strikes?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The fact that we are now seeing an absolute logjam through the Strait of Hormuz, which, as you say, is a crucial shipping route for energy supplies, has really rattled markets. Look, when we started on Monday morning, we had seen the oil price jump a bit. We certainly saw gas prices jump more considerably. But I think investors were really sort of taking a cautious approach. They were wondering quite how long this attack was going to go on for, whether we would hear more from the United States. Could be going on. Of course, instead, what we've seen is a real ratcheting up. And more than that, we've seen attacks from Iran on really important infrastructure in places like Qatar, which have had a huge impact then on the price of energy across the world. And as that happens, people start to consider how long this might go on for. What happens if the Strait of Hormuz is shut for a prolonged period of time? And those really ratcheted up inflation. And I think investors are now starting to consider this in very different terms.
Yeah, and it is very different because it's not just the Strait of Hormuz that is closed. We're seeing key infrastructure that has been damaged here. We also know that President Trump and the administration insurance guarantees, bringing in the Development Finance Corporation, also saying there's going to be naval escorts for some of the vessels. A lot of the experts I've spoken to are not completely convinced that it's going to work for the 130 through the Strait on a daily basis. What are you? All right, Danny, we've lost Danny, unfortunately. Danny Houston there for us, taking us through all the shocks that we're seeing in the energy markets and the impact that's going to have on global oil prices and how that's going to feed through into inflationary impacts in all parts of the world. Meantime, the United Nations Secretary General is also sending a warning that the war in Iran could spiral out of control. Antonio Guterres called for an end to the fighting and urged for serious negotiations to take place. Iran's UN ambassador has called on the UN to do more to stop the deaths of civilians.
Despite our repeated communication to the Security Council calling for an immediate halt to this criminal war, the Council has remained silent. According to the latest report of the Iranian Red Crescent Society, at least 1,332 civilians, including women and children, have lost their lives so far.
Right, President Trump is once again focusing on Cuba. It's only a matter of time before the regime crumbles. When we return, the plans Mr. Trump has for the island nation if the government falls. And there are new details about who may be responsible for the bombing of a girls' elementary school in Iran. What analysis of the strike shows. We'll be right back.
It is a busy news day all around the world.
This is One World.
The world's top headlines with some of the world's biggest players.
Stories that captivate from two unique perspectives. Zain Asher and Bianna Golodriga use their extensive experience to cover global news with passion and intellect.
Walk us through what specifically Secretary of State Marco Rubio was talking about.
What leverage, if any, does Prime Minister Netanyahu have at this point?
One World. Zain Asher and Bianna Golodriga. Days on CNN.
We're at a demonstration here in Tokyo where people are protesting Japan's immigration law revision.
As you can tell by the crowds of people around me, it's put a strain on resources and local communities.
I'm in Hanamaki Higashi, a high school known for its elite baseball team. This is no nursing home. It's just Japan's biggest women's prison.
Now we have to change their diapers, help them eat. It feels more like a nursing home than a prison.
Yu is one of hundreds of Japanese women forced to sell their bodies. This is just one of the many roads that have been completely destroyed in Wajima City, making it nearly impossible for aid to get in. What is your current level of communication with North Korea?
You touched me. What did you see?
I saw a landscape.
Saw a landscape?
Spaces, caves, tunnels and oceans, undiscovered countries.
The evolution they both went on doing this film, and the big anchor was less about what theirs or my visions of what if you could truly meditate without a thought for 8 hours a day.
It's the ocean that shapes everything. Climate, weather, planetary temperature, planetary chemistry. It's where most of life on Earth actually is. People don't know why they should care. And that's what Mission Blue is trying to do. Protect what we can, inspire people to embrace the wild, restore places that have degraded to get to a better place. This network of hope through the Hope Spots that now are in 113 countries around the world, including the high seas, which is like half the world, just the blue part. So part of Mission Blue's mission is to inspire people to know, to care, and to take care of what keeps us alive.
The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper, Emmy winner for Outstanding Reported News Program. Sarah Seidner delves into the decision to strike Iran, the fallout, and what happens next. The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper on CNN.
President Trump is once again suggesting Cuba is next on his administration's agenda, telling CNN the regime, quote, is going to fall pretty soon. He also said he'd put Secretary of State Marco Rubio in charge of the island nation. The U.S. has put intense pressure on Cuba in recent weeks, including an oil embargo, which has caused a severe energy shortage. CNN's Patrick Oppman has more for us from Havana.
Donald Trump says that Cuba is, quote, ready to fall. It would seem to be the kind of rehashed bluster we've heard from many U.S. presidents since the Cold War, but now it does feel a little different. The oil embargo that Donald Trump has put on this island gives some credence to his comments to CNN that the government here is hanging on by the thinnest of threads. Every day we see less cars, the blackouts become longer and longer, and people are becoming increasingly desperate as they wonder how their food will last in fridges if there's no more power, how they will earn a living if inflation is out of control and salaries are becoming near to worthless. And so when Donald Trump says the Cuban government is desperate for a deal, as he told CNN's Dana Bash on Friday, perhaps there is some truth in that, although the Cuban officials that I speak to say they will never allow the U.S. to dictate to them ever again, and they are willing to resist the Trump administration, even willing to take to the streets and fight if necessary. All the same, though, this appears to be checkmate, as no other governments, not Cuba's allies, Russia or China, certainly not Venezuela following the U.S. attack on that country, or even Mexico following a pressure campaign from the Trump administration, are stepping in to send oil, the oil that this economy so desperately needs. So at the moment, there are rumors and whispers of talks of back going on, of deals being struck, but as this crisis goes on, it is taking a far more deeper toll on the Cuban people. Patrick Oppman, CNN, Havana.
Russia is not playing a neutral observer in the war in Iran. That's according to multiple sources who have spoken to CNN. They say U.S. intelligence shows that Moscow is supplying Tehran with intelligence about the location and movement of U.S. ships, planes and troops. Much of it comes from Russian satellites, but it's still unclear if any Iranian attack can be linked to the intelligence that's been received from Moscow. Russia's state news agency says the two countries' presidents held a phone call on Friday and agreed to continue contact. For more, we are joined by CNN's Gabe Cohen. He's in Washington. Gabe, thanks so much for staying up for us late again. We appreciate it. What else can you tell us about Russia apparently getting involved now?
Well, Ben, look, that's one of the reasons this is really significant, right, is because it's the first indication that Moscow is getting involved in this war, with those sources telling us that Russia is providing that intel about the location of American troops and assets so that Iranian military can target them. And much of that intelligence is coming from this sophisticated satellite system that Russia has. It's a tool that Iran on its own does not have, as the country has seen its own capabilities degraded day after day from all of this fighting. It's not a huge surprise to see these two countries in communication or collaboration. These are nations that for years now have been working together in some capacity on various military technology, missiles, drones. What we don't know, though, is whether this means Russia's involvement in this crisis, in this conflict, could expand, especially after that phone call you referenced, Ben, on Friday between Iran's president and Vladimir Putin, Russia's president. Now, the White House, for their part, they have brushed off this story. They do not want to talk, it seems, about Russia. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth told CBS News that, of course, the president is well aware of who is talking to who, and at this point, there is no reason to believe there's any security threat because of Russian involvement. Though I will note, as of a couple days ago, Hegseth told reporters that Russia and China are, quote, not really a factor in this war. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, she told reporters that if Russia is in fact providing this intel to Iran, it's not making much of a difference at this point because of the success of the U.S. military operation thus far. And President Trump himself, he snapped at a reporter from Fox News on Friday about the story during an event at the White House that was focused on how to potentially change college sports. Here's what the president said.
It sounds like the Russians are helping Iran target and attack Americans now.
That's an easy problem compared to what we're doing here. I mean, but can I be honest? It's just, I have a lot of respect for you. You've always been very nice to me. What a stupid question that is to be asking at this time. We're talking about...
So we haven't heard the administration condemn Russia for this, but as that clip clearly shows, and there are plenty of others, this administration is really laser focused on talking about the success of this operation. Trump telling CNN on Friday, quote, a week ago, Iran was powerful. Now they have been indeed neutered. But Ben, one of the big questions, we have heard the administration say they were hoping for this 4 to 5 week timeline for this war effort. It's unclear if that if more countries like Russia into the conflict.
Well, thank you for that update. Appreciate it. For our hours as well. We really appreciate that too. The White House has not ruled out that U.S. military forces carried out the strike that hit a girls' elementary school in the southern Iranian city of Minab on Saturday. Iran state media says at least 168 children and 14 teachers were killed. CNN's Isabel Young has more for us on the analysis of the bombing.
Nearly a week after a strike killed scores of students in Iran's Minab, it seems more and more likely that the U.S. A new satellite image shows an Iranian Revolutionary Guards base and an elementary school in southern Iran. Here you see craters in several of the buildings, including the school. They were hit in their exact centers, suggesting precision strikes, experts say. A wall separates the school and the base. Satellite images from December show dozens of people in what appears to be a handball court at the school. Reuters now reports that US military investigators believe US forces were responsible, though they haven't yet reached a final conclusion.
It paints a picture of multiple simultaneous It looks like these were delivered with explosive munitions, probably air-delivered. I think the most likely scenario in this case is that it's a US or Israeli airstrike gone awry. It's probably a targeting failure somewhere in the targeting cycle, an intelligence failure.
The Israeli military say they weren't operating in the area.
To date, we've hit over 2,000 targets.
American military officials say they carried out extensive strikes in this area and released this map showing strikes in southern Iran. The base and the school in Minab are located here.
We, of course, never target targets, but we're investigating that.
The damage is quite significant, and it's unlikely it was something like an air defense missile.
Responsible airstrikes. We typically try to examine the fragments left behind, but in this instance, there's an internet blackout in Iran. It's been really difficult to obtain that, and so this investigation is still not conclusive. Isabel Young, CNN, London.
In response to CNN's findings, a US military spokesperson said, quote, "It would be inappropriate to comment given the incident is under investigation." Okay, more of our coverage from the Middle East. We will go live to the region where Gulf states have been fending off Iran's retaliatory strikes. See you in a moment.
Tokyo at night is something else.
Wow, that's crazy.
The city feels alive.
Wow, that's cool.
Like you can taste the energy. It's where traditional meets modern. And every step lights up a new discovery. Tokyo is truly unforgettable.
Caitlin Collins is your DC source, bringing you unprecedented access to the White House.
What would you say to the survivors who feel like they haven't gotten justice?
Capitol Hill.
What does re-examining that look like? Are you saying that that's not going to happen? What exactly are your day-to-day responsibilities?
And beyond.
And good evening from Davos, Switzerland, where President Trump just capped off a whirlwind trip. You were obviously named by President Trump.
For in-depth political coverage and analysis, watch The Source weekdays on CNN.
We try to be global and we try to be smart. But I want to hear our authentic voices of people who are passionate or intelligent, and that's the consistency that we try to get at.
Fareed Zakaria, GPS, Sundays on CNN.
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels. Connected to your world.
Any of these explosions, any of these munitions come close to this position?
Yes, we had some land 200-300 meters away.
There is a Chinese Coast Guard ship directly in front of this Philippines Coast Guard vessel. This animal is a symbol of this country.
It's an iconic species.
Is it in trouble?
It's very much in trouble.
This is how Ukraine is honoring one of its fallen warriors.
I'm Melissa Bell in Paris, and this is CNN.
I'm Melanie Jokos, live for you in Abu Dhabi. I want to take a look at today's top stories. Iran state media says explosions can be heard occurred in parts of the capital, Tehran. It comes hours after dramatic videos showed the city's Mehrabad airport in flames. The Israeli military says it used more than 80 fighter jets to carry out a, quote, broad-scale wave of strikes on Iran earlier today. The United Nations Secretary General is warning that the war in Iran could spiral out of control. Antonio Guterres said the attacks are causing harm to civilians in the region and pose a grave risk to the global economy. He has called for an end to the fighting and urged for serious negotiations to take place. Iran's president has announced that Tehran would stop striking its Gulf neighbors unless attacks originate from those countries. He also apologized to those nations in an address on Saturday. It is not clear when the attacks will stop. After the address, interceptions continued over the United Arab Emirates and sirens rang in Bahrain. We've got CNN senior producer Bijan Hosseini monitoring all of this for us in Doha. And from my understanding as well, you've received alerts, Bijan, there where you are to take cover. Give me a sense of what you're experiencing.
Yeah, I want to start off by reading Pezeshkian's comments. They're pretty remarkable. He said, "I personally apologize to the neighboring countries that were attacked by Iran." He then added, "We do not intend to attack neighboring countries. As I have repeatedly said, they are our brothers." The irony of that, as you pointed out, is we got a security alert on our phones asking us to seek shelter from authorities here in Qatar around the same time he made these comments, maybe shortly after. We did get the all clear about 30 minutes ago. Then Qatar's Ministry of Defense coming out saying they had successfully intercepted a missile attack. All that happening in this morning as well in the UAE. Some of our colleagues receiving alerts to shelter from Abu Dhabi to Dubai to Sharjah, and the ministry saying they had intercepted attacks there as well. In Saudi Arabia today, more than 20 drones targeting the Sheba oil field. It's a massive oil and gas field that is operated by Saudi Aramco out in the empty quarter. That's a vast stretch of desert out in Saudi Arabia. And in Bahrain, hearing sounds and sirens throughout the morning there to seek shelter. So obviously we're hearing these comments from Iran. We did hear from U.S. Central Command on Thursday. They said that Iran's missile attacks had decreased by 90% and that their drone attacks had decreased by 80% versus from the start of the war. We're now in our 8th day, but no signs of slowing down in these Gulf countries. Eleni?
Yeah, Bijan, really good point. So Masoud Pezeshkian saying that the attacks on neighborly countries will stop. We don't know when that will take effect. Bijan there in Doha obviously experiencing those alerts as well as other parts of the region as well. Thank you so much, Bijan. Good to see you, and we'll catch up with you very soon. Now, as the future of Iran hangs in the balance, CNN chief international anchor Christiane Amanpour spoke to Iranian democracy activist Mehdi Mahmoudyan from Tehran. He spent nearly a decade of his life imprisoned by the regime, and they discussed his hopes for the country and the future. Take a look.
Mehdi Mahmoudyan, welcome to our program from Tehran. I can't tell you how pleased we are to have you. Can you just tell me how it is for you, what it is like, the bombing, how do you feel about it?
What happened in the streets of Tehran and after the war in Tehran brought out two different feelings in us. One was a sense of joy that those who had played a role in suppressing the people, those who had killed thousands of people in the streets or had ordered massacres, were killed and were no longer there to continue the repression. On the other hand, we were sad that our country had been invaded and the countries had attacked our country based on their own interests. And these feelings can be easily seen on the faces of the people, both joy at the death of the dictator and sadness that the war had begun and that it would probably bring decades of suffering to Iran.
Do you think, Mehdi Mahmoudyan, that there is a possibility to change your regime, and how do you think it should happen? Who should be leading the change?
I was in prison for at least 9 years, and I hoped that I and all my friends and comrades in Iran who were fighting to confront tyranny and replace it with a democratic system, we hoped that we could establish the system with the help of civil society and the Iranian people. Today, I also hope that America and its allies will allow the fate of Iran to be determined by the Iranian people themselves, and allow us to determine our own fate by stopping the war of attrition.
All right, we're going to a very short break. We'll be back right after this.
Weekdays on CNN.
Tonight on 16,
the stories that matter.
This whole area is just engulfed in flames.
From a trusted voice.
We witnessed something nobody alive has ever seen before. You said that AI could wipe out half of all entry-level jobs. How soon might that happen?
A fearless eyewitness.
We just got a red alert to go down to a bomb shelter.
Every night make sense of the world.
How do you make the case that USAID's previous mission was in the United States' national interest?
Anderson Cooper 360. Weekdays on CNN.
In a divided America,
where do I fit? You tell me, ask your party.
Abby Phillip brings all sides to the table.
Can you name one thing you do differently? The hypocrisy is so rank, folks at home. Classes in session.
To talk about the issues.
Congresswoman, it is false. The answer is zero.
The policies.
What is the Democratic Party about? Can you answer that question?
And the biggest debates to wrap up your day.
I hear what you're saying Trump believes in, but do you think it's a good idea?
News Night with Abby Phillip, Tuesday through Saturday on CNN.
If you didn't know better, you might think this was an American football halftime show. But this stadium is in Taiwan, and those cheerleaders, they're engineers from Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, the world's top chip maker. But I'm here to see a different side of Taiwan's tech behemoth, TSMC's 28th annual Sports Day.
What's your favorite thing about Sports Day?
To have all the people come together to celebrate the team spirit and the pride of being a member of TSMC. And I really hope that our global colleagues can bring that spirit and that pride back to where they come from.
Cheering employees here are from across the globe. Back in 2000, TSMC operated just one overseas semiconductor fabrication plant. By 2025, that number has grown to 5, with 4 more under construction. The company is expanding well beyond Taiwan to the US, Japan, and Germany, all to meet surging demands, to stay closer to its customers, and as part of the tech giant's global expansion plans.
Russian lines are just 1 kilometer from here.
This is just one of the latest buildings struck by Israel here in the southern suburbs of Beirut.
This is our town, insists Galina. We're staying here. We know our soldiers are protecting us. In the end, a child is a child, says Nadra. The mother of a child is a mother, whether she's Israeli or Palestinian.
Iran is warning other countries to not sending in military assets. So where does Europe actually stand on this war right now?
Yeah, you know, that's a good question, and it's one that I don't think is very easy to answer. Europe is divided at the best of times. And so in a situation like this, every country has diplomatic relations or had diplomatic relations with Iran. So their relationships are very different. Here in Italy, you know, the government has been very adamant about saying we are not at war, we are not at war. But like France, they're also sending military assets, naval assets towards the Middle East, along with Greece and France. And we've seen Germany, for example, be, trying to calm things down, trying to call for diplomacy. And yet in Spain, we've got an entirely different reaction, which is sort of, very much anti-war, very much anti-confrontation.
And there is also a growing dispute between Washington and Madrid too, after Spain refused to let the US use its bases. Where does that currently stand? How is that changing things?
Well, I mean, there are around 40 bases run by the United States across Europe. We've got some in Sicily here, in Italy, some in the north of the country, and in Germany as well, and in France. Now, France and Germany and Italy have said that they would be willing to consider the use of U.S. using those bases if there's been a request, because there are protocols in place. There was a protocol in place as well with Spain, but Spain has refused in the beginning to be involved, to allow anything any military action from those bases on the Spanish mainland. That has not changed. Now, that immediately turned into sort of a trade war, with Donald Trump saying they didn't need any Spanish goods, so that they'd be, shutting down all trade. That has sort of calmed down a little bit. But it really feels on some level, Ben, it's sort of out of control, with everybody trying to figure out what the message is. And certainly they are not on the same page yet. Ben?
Okay, well, thank you so much for that update. Barbie Latinado. Speak to you soon. And now let's go back to Eleni for our oil and market update. Eleni.
Thanks so much, Ben. Quickly checking in on how Brent and WTI have been performing over the past few days. We've got an energy price shock that is coming into play. You've got the Strait of Hormuz that is shut down, and of course critical energy infrastructure that has been hit. Brent crude sitting just above $93 a barrel. A lot of the experts that I've spoken to are expecting triple digits on both of those benchmarks as we continue to see hostilities and a huge effect on supply into the global market. We'll check in on those numbers a little later, but in the meantime, we also have a lot of analysis to do on the political front, and as things stand in Iran right now, and also the most latest comments from Masoud Pezeshkian. I want to bring in Ronan Bergman. He's a staff writer for the New York Times Magazine. Ronan, great to have you with us. And just in today's news, we heard from the president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, saying that Iran is going to stop targeting its neighbors and also apologize for that. At the same time, we had colleagues and people in Doha talking about alerts there. We've seen strikes this morning in Abu Dhabi as well as in Dubai. Give me a sense of what you believe is happening in Iran from a centralized or decentralized government perspective, and how that's going to play a hand on how long this lasts.
Well, the killing of Khamenei, the supreme leader, of course, at least in the immediate future, left a vacuum. As long as he was alive, it was his word, and that's it. And anything, especially on these strategic issues, would have brought to his attention and his decision. Now, it's not defragmentation, but different parties and different sects inside the regime are taking different stands. I am told, Israeli intelligence believe that this time, surprisingly, and unlike previous times, it is the military, the regular military, not the RGC military, that is taking the more hawkish point of view. And we saw where Iran was speaking in two voices. He says that they don't want to. The Hezbollah started to bomb Israel. So it's not clear who is in total control. I assume that if the president said something like that, the president will seem to be like, sort of the weakest link of all the leadership of the regime. He said that probably he believes that he has the power to fulfill, but I'm not sure that we saw the end of this confrontation. And even if, I'm not sure that this is not sort of too late from the point of view of the countries that were attacked in their future relations with Iran.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on here. We've seen strikes on critical energy infrastructure. We've seen strikes aimed at airports. There's an amazing interception rate here, which, of course, has, saved so much of the damage, the potential damage here. What kind of off-ramp do you believe Iran might be looking at, or even President Trump and Israel, to try and ensure that they stick to that 4-week, timeline that the Trump administration was talking about?
You ask about Iran. You're asking about Iran, the Iran's point of view, right? Yes. So I think Iran is seeing this as an existential war. And, it just makes sense when, not in all the statements, but in the statement from the leaders, especially from President Trump, you hear the ambition and the goal, and in a sort of accelerated volume for a regime change. So from the point of view of a regime, this is an existential war, doomsday scenario, and in this kind of war, they use everything they have, including putting themselves beyond the point of no return in their relationship with the Arab countries. So what I don't know how this statement from Pezeshkian will play out, but I think that what we will see is just more of the same in the sense of making the West pay price for the war. In casualties, in oil prices, in economy, and trying to hold on. And for the time being, we need to say we do not see real cracks in the regime. We don't see defection. We see that even if hammered and severely damaged, their command and control system is more or less working, even if there are different factions there. And this is the way that this is playing out now. I don't see a solution in the coming future. And of course, when Hezbollah decided.
All right, Ronen Bergman, thank you so very much. Good to have you with us. I appreciate your insights today. A lot happening, as you can see some of those attacks on the screen, and we're monitoring the situation across the region. All right, thank you so much, Ronen. After the break, a look at the powerful tributes to the late civil rights leader Jackson and his music-filled memorial service. We'll be back right after this. Stick with CNN.
I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Happiness could lead to living longer. You want to know how? On my podcast, Chasing Life, I'm uncovering the secrets of people around the world who are living happy, healthy, extraordinary lives. Hear how they do it and the science behind why it works. Join me as I reveal their secrets and discover how we can chase life together. Listen to Chasing Life with me, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, wherever you get your podcasts.
Did the re-election of Donald Trump play any role in your decision to resign? Why do you need to study it? It sounds like you have the facts on your fingertips.
Great question.
You continue to fight for your name to be cleared. Why? Do you have any concerns about Elon Musk?
There really is much more that unites us as Americans than that which divides us.
A moment with huge consequences for the nation and the world.
Watch The Lead, weeknights on CNN.
CNN Sports, non-stop action year-round.
I have a lot of things to give to the football. All the major events.
I love where the game is going right now.
What does it be even better?
And tournaments.
The emotions sometimes are impossible to control.
The latest highlights.
Women's sport is having a moment that it should have always had.
And exclusive interviews with your favorite coaches and players.
We're going to keep this thing rolling.
You rock.
Don't miss
CNN World Sport, only on CNN.
He's got more inside of him than any man I've ever met.
You don't know all that much about his life. So it frees you up as an actor to go, oh, you're playing this wildly creative man, but we're playing him from a point where he's not aware of his own myth, because no myth exists yet. He's just... So you have this creative force that you get to, like, throw yourself into, and it was such a joy.
The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper, Emmy winner for Outstanding Recorded News Program. Sarah Seidner delves into the decision to strike Iran, the fallout, and what happens next. The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper on CNN.
Floods swept entire neighborhoods like this into the sea.
It's hard for the city. There's many people without a home, without electricity, without water.
Gaza's children tried to be children again.
I didn't expect Alma to survive. She had a fractured skull.
It's unclear what has been hit here. We have seen the warnings.
Little Omar holds his tiny brother's hand and carries a bag of flour. Our house is gone, Omar says. Our area's been emptied out, Ahmed says. There's no one left.
They shot my eye and they shot others, but the struggle is going on. No matter how many they kill, they cannot stop the spring from coming.
God bless the souls of all those who died.
I can't imagine what it's been like for you growing up without your mother.
We're not just here for our family, but for freedom and democracy.
Welcome back. A local reporter for a Nashville Spanish language news channel was arrested by ICE on Wednesday. Her attorneys did not have a warrant, but lawyers for the Department of Homeland Security say they did file one and her visa had expired. Estefany Rodriguez was sitting in her car with her husband when ICE agents detained her. The car had a press logo identifying her as a journalist. But still, Rodriguez immigrated to the US legally from Colombia in 2021. She's being sponsored by her husband, who is a US citizen. Her attorney says she's in custody at an immigration detention center. Leaders across politics, faith and culture gathered in Chicago on Friday to honor the life and legacy of civil rights leader Reverend Jesse Jackson. He died on February 17th and he was 84 years old. The joyful and music-filled service that you're seeing there followed Jackson's journey from a child of the Jim Crow South through his fight for civil rights to his role as a political powerhouse in Washington, D.C. CNN's Jeff Zeleny has more for us from Chicago.
3 former living Democratic presidents and scores of dignitaries and thousands of mourners gathered in Chicago on Friday to pay tribute and celebrate the life and legacy of the Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. Chicago, of course, was his political home, but indeed the world knew Jesse Jackson as not only a political figure, but an international one of diplomacy. His family praised him as a father, a grandfather as well. It was a touching afternoon of tributes here at the House of Hope on the south side of Chicago. But from President Barack Obama to Bill Clinton to Joe Biden, they all shared lessons about Jackson.
Each day we wake up to some new assault on our democratic institutions. Another setback to the idea of the rule of law. An offense to common decency. But this man, Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson, inspires us to take a harder path. His voice calls on each of us to be heralds of change, to be messengers of hope, to step forward and say, send me, wherever we have a chance to make an impact.
I knew Jesse, and history remembers him. I know him as determined and tenacious. I know him as underrated, undeterred, and unafraid. Not a joke. And more than most, Jesse was dedicated with every fiber in his being to redeeming the soul of America.
We did not always agree, but I'll tell you one thing. He made me a better president when I got in office. Because he was always pushing on things. And he knew that change came from the outside in and sometimes from the inside out. So he knew how to keep pushing and nagging and wearing you out.
And former Vice President Kamala Harris also addressing the crowd, reminding that she was a student in 1988 during Jackson's second presidential bid. She said that was inspiring for her as well. She implored Americans to take lessons from Jackson's life and apply them to today's challenges. Jeff Zeleny, CNN, Chicago.
8 people have been killed in destructive tornadoes that tore across the central United States. The U.S. National Weather Service tracked this tornado near Three Rivers, Michigan on Friday. Look at that. Yikes. A homeowner also filmed a tornado as it moved through Union City.
There goes a house.
My goodness. Officials say at least 4 people were killed and 12 others injured in Michigan. Multiple homes and barns were damaged or destroyed. A round of storms killed 2 people in Oklahoma just one day after a tornado killed a mother and daughter. Those wild images. That wraps up this hour of CNN Newsroom. I'm Ben Hunt in Atlanta, and our coverage from the Middle East continues after this quick break. See you